I learned two things that Tuesday morning. One, coffee tastes different when you're staring at a crime scene in your front yard. And two, nothing in life prepares you for the moment someone hits your mailbox and then tries to sue you for it. I'm not kidding. That's how the worst 8 months of my life started, with the sound of metal folding in on itself and with snapping like a dry bone. I remember jumping up from my desk barefoot, still in old college sweatpants, thinking maybe a delivery truck clipped something. Instead, I looked out the window and saw my mailbox lying on its side like it had just been executed, and Barbara Henderson backing her silver Mercedes away like she'd just bumped into a shopping cart at Target. I ran outside into that Arizona heat. You know, that wall of dry morning heat that hits you even before your brain wakes up? And there she was, standing in front of her SUV, staring at the bumper with this expression like someone had dented her soul. "Are you okay?" I asked, because that's what normal people say after accidents. She looked up, and I watched the entire emotional arc happen in real time. Surprise, embarrassment, and then something colder. That shift. The moment someone decides they're not wrong. "Your mailbox is in a dangerous position," she said, brushing imaginary dust off her blazer. I could have been seriously injured. I actually laughed. Not because it was funny, because my brain didn't know what else to do. The mailbox had been there since the house was built. Same spot as every other one on the street. She'd driven 6 feet onto my lawn to hit it. But right there, standing in my yard, I realized something. This wasn't going to be simple. Because Barbara wasn't just a neighbor. She was HOA royalty. Clipboard. Rules. That tight smile people wear when they enjoy correcting others. And sure enough, 10 minutes later, she told me she'd called the police. That's when the day stopped being weird and started becoming something else entirely. The officer who showed up looked like a man who'd seen too many neighborhood wars. He walked the yard, measured the tire tracks, took notes. You could practically see him thinking, "Please let this be straightforward." Barbara told him she swerved to avoid a dog. A dog I never saw. A dog no one saw. A dog that apparently vanished into thin air like it had an alibi. The officer nodded, wrote everything down, then said the most beautiful sentence I'd heard all week. "Mailbox appears properly positioned." You'd think that would have been the end of it. Insurance handles it. We all move on, right? Yeah, that's what I thought too. 2 weeks later, I got a certified letter. Nothing good has ever arrived in a certified envelope. Nothing. I opened it standing at my kitchen counter, and by the time I finished reading, my hand was shaking. Barbara was suing me. $10,000. Emotional distress. Hazardous property conditions. I read it 3 times because it felt like reading a parody of reality. She hit my mailbox, and now I was the defendant. That's the moment everything inside me tightened. Not exploded, tightened, like some invisible gear locked into place. Because suddenly it wasn't about a mailbox anymore. It was about someone deciding reality didn't apply to them. My insurance lawyer was calm about it. Too calm. The kind of calm that comes from seeing human nonsense in bulk. "These cases happen," she said. "But you've got documentation, right?" Oh, I had documentation. Photos, police reports, measurements, every email. That's when the second wave hit, the HOA violations. My new mailbox, not compliant. My trash cans, visible at the wrong time. My grass, too long. Garage open, unsightly. One notice after another, like someone was feeding quarters into a machine labeled, "Make his life miserable." And every single one had Barbara's fingerprints all over it. At first, I tried being reasonable. Calm responses, polite appeals, benefit of the doubt. But after the 6th violation in a month, something snapped. Not loud, not dramatic, just quiet clarity. If she wanted a fight, she was getting a very organized one. I started documenting everything like a forensic accountant with a grudge. I walked the neighborhood, taking photos of every mailbox, measured distances, highlighted inconsistencies, printed HOA bylaws like I was studying for the bar exam. And then came the first real crack in her armor. The board meeting. That room smelled like stale coffee and fake neutrality. Barbara sat there like she owned gravity itself, ready to explain why I was the problem. So I asked one question. Can I see the meeting minutes where the mailbox rule was changed? Silence. That heavy kind. The kind that makes people shift in their chairs. Turns out, the rule hadn't been properly posted, which meant, legally, it didn't exist. I watched the board president slowly realize what was happening. That moment when someone understands they've stepped into a mess wearing socks. Violation rescinded. It felt good, not triumphant, just validating. Like the universe had blinked and admitted I wasn't crazy. But Barbara didn't back off. If anything, she escalated. More notices, more photos, more petty citations. And that's when the twist came, the part one never expected. The deposition. You ever sit in a room and watch someone unravel under polite questioning? It's surreal, like watching eyes crack under sunlight. My lawyer asked about the dog. What breed? I don't know. What direction did it run? I don't remember. Did anyone else see it? Silence. Then she asked how many violations Barbara had issued against me. Barbara didn't know the number, but everyone in the room felt it. And for the first time, I saw doubt flicker across her lawyer's face. That was the turning point. Not loud, not cinematic, just a subtle shift when truth starts stacking weight. A few weeks later, we had an emergency HOA meeting because Barbara tried to paint me as a disruptive resident. That night changed everything. Neighbors showed up, not for me, for the drama. But then people started talking. Stories spilled out. Chalk drawings cited as violations. Lawn fines. Petty warnings. I realized I wasn't the villain in her story. I was just the first one who fought back. And once people smelled that truth in the air, the whole narrative cracked open. Her complaint failed. Publicly. You could feel the room turn, like a current shifting direction. And then came the day that finally ended it, the courtroom. Small, quiet, fluorescent lighting that makes everything feel more real than it should. My lawyer spoke calmly, laying out facts like bricks. Photos, reports, timelines. Barbara's lawyer tried to argue credibility issues. The judge didn't even look impressed, just tired, like someone who'd seen too many adults act like toddlers with legal budgets. Then she said it. Summary judgment granted. Case dismissed with prejudice. The gavel came down, and it was like someone cut a rope that had been pulling tight around my chest for months. Just like that, it was over. But here's the part nobody tells you about winning. You don't feel fireworks. You feel quiet, like walking out into sunlight after months indoors. We countersued, not for revenge, for closure. For the record, for the principle that reality matters. It's settled. Money, apology, and a legal clause that basically said, try this again and it'll cost you dearly. A few months later, Barbara was gone. New neighborhood, new HOA, new people to manage. And life did something strange after all that chaos. It went back to normal. Neighbors waved again. Barbecues happened. My girlfriend moved in. We got a dog who barks at butterflies like they owe him money. And that black metal mailbox stood there at the end of my driveway. Sturdy, quiet, completely unremarkable. Which is funny because for a while, it felt like the most important object in the world. Here's the thing I didn't understand back then. It was never about the mailbox. It was about what happens when someone with a little authority decides they're untouchable, and what happens when someone else decides they're not backing down. I learned that bullies don't always shout. Sometimes they send certified mail. Sometimes they hide behind bylaws and polite smiles. And I learned something else too, something that hit me later, not in the courtroom, not during the chaos, but on a random evening walking my dog past that same mailbox. Standing your ground isn't heroic. It's exhausting. It costs time, sleep, peace of mind. But sometimes the real cost is what happens if you don't. Because if you let small injustices slide, they don't stay small. They grow roots. They become patterns. They teach people what they can get away with. And once in a while, pushing back changes more than your own story. One day, a neighbor told me watching me fight gave them the courage to stop paying bogus fines. That's when it clicked. Not every victory looks dramatic. Sometimes it looks like fewer violation letters, quieter streets, a community breathing easier. That's the kind of justice nobody films movies about. But matters. Now, years later, life is peaceful in the most boring, beautiful way. I check the mail without anxiety. I wave at neighbors without wondering who's documenting me. The HOA meetings are dull again, which is exactly how they should be. And every now and then, when I grab the mail, I catch myself smiling at that mailbox like an old war buddy. Because in a strange way, it reminds me of a simple truth. Sometimes the smallest battles reveal the biggest lines in the sand. And sometimes karma doesn't come as lightning. It comes as a quiet courtroom, a dismissed case, and the slow realization that power without integrity eventually collapses under its own weight. So here's the question I still think about sometimes. If you were in my shoes, dragged into months of stress over something absurd, would you have fought back or would you have walked away for peace? No right answers here, just real ones. I'd actually love to hear what you do, or if you've ever dealt with someone who tried to twist reality and got burned by in the end.